Hi guys, this is Play It Again. I'm Ginger.
And I'm Mike.
Wish me luck.
I love that intro. It was so hard not to create like a 5-minute intro for you. Seriously, it just kept coming, and my phone is so full of you. I look like a total fangirl, which I am. Welcome to the Bunny Interviews. This is Ginger, and I am bringing Ginger on. I begged her to come onto the show today because she is endlessly fascinating. She has done so many cool things. And the coolest part is she shares it all with us online. And so I feel like we've really like journeyed with you in so many different ways. And your husband. I mean, it's just a win-win. So welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on. She said, I don't know what you want to talk to me about, but I'm game. I was like, okay.
I'll talk about almost anything.
I love it. So you've got your primary channel, which your YouTube sign in the back. I'm so excited. I love it.
Me
You're
too.
103,000 followers right now, or subscribers right now on Play It Again with Mike and Ginger.
Yep.
I love that. And then you also have a Ginger girl, a Ginger in the Wild. And on Twitter, you're a handy Ginger gal.
Yes.
What am I missing? What else are there?
Isn't that enough? I think that's it.
It's a lot to manage.
It is a lot.
I love
it. It is
that.
a lot, and I do almost all of it. Like my husband, he's a very big part of our channel, but only on camera for the most part. Like all of the other stuff, all of the social media stuff, all the video editing, I do all that. So I do all of that plus everything else that you see me share. So yeah, it's a full-time job.
I love that. And from what I'm understanding, this is truly your full-time job now, correct?
Yeah, we're retired. Retired. I work harder now than I ever did before.
Yeah. I love that because pre-COVID, or maybe it had nothing to do with COVID, it just happened to be similar time frames. But when I first was introduced to you, you were posting you were clearly still in corporate world. You know, you had a regular job, and you were, posting your outfit of the day and things of that nature, and I loved it because and I think that's what first grabbed my attention about your presence online, was that you were kind of sharing how to dress as a female in the workplace and how to kind of be attractive while still being more modest. And there were just so many things about the way you shared the information for women and dress and behavior that it always just really appealed to me.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You know what? I was never really good at it before either. When I was a teenager, I was a terrible dresser. I was the ugliest teenager ever. Really. Oh, hi, Chase. So Chase,
I love it.
I see Chase Carnison is in there. He's another music reactor.
That's
very good friend of ours.
Cool. I
So,
love that.
hi, Chase. So yeah, I was a really, really terribly ugly teenager, and I didn't know how to dress. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started actually figuring out, what went together and not looking like a ridiculous idiot, right? Like I would look like a clown in high school sometimes. It was pretty bad. But
I find that hard to imagine.
No, I know. And I look back and I go, I don't even know where it came from. But yeah, it was that bad. But I did get pretty good at it. And I at some point I got to a point where I actually didn't care what other people thought about it, and then it even made it easier. So I just kind of
Right.
used my own flair. But uh, I worked for so many years in like large corporate offices, and the number of women I saw that would just kind of dress like they didn't care what they looked like, right? Like frumpy and poorly fitted, and just
Yeah.
and it's unnecessary. That was unnecessary. And lots of people would say, well, I don't know how to do it, or it's really expensive. And one of my biggest things about posting my outfits was to brag, like this whole outfit cost me under $100, right? It's possible
Exactly.
to look
Yeah.
like $1,000,000 for really cheap. So like this top here is like $3.
I love that. I love
So
that. Well, and I do appreciate that. And maybe the reason that you became so good at teaching it was that you have this background where you actually had to learn the lessons. It didn't necessarily come as naturally to you.
mhm,
And so you knew what to teach.
maybe.
I love that.
Maybe. Yeah, I had a couple people that said, "Oh, you should do like a Gumroad course on how to dress feminine." I was like, I don't even know if I could do that. I'm so happy to give the information away for free.
That's pretty good. That's
Mhm.
pretty good. Your online presence, from the outfits of the day to, your reaction videos to construction, demo, remodeling projects to your homesteading that you're doing now,
Mhm.
travels, all kinds of things. Where did you clearly have like a flair or a spark or an attraction for like sharing parts of your life online. And it feels like, as a viewer, it feels like a big part, which is very cool because then, like people like me feel like they know you, you know, so it's very cool. So where did that start? What was your first foray into like YouTube, let's say, because that's I feel like really when people our age kind of started sharing more. It was more than just
Mhm.
Facebook, but YouTube was like, you have a YouTube channel? So
Yeah.
what was your first YouTube channel?
Well, our first YouTube channel was the Mike and Ginger music channel.
Really?
I started actually sharing my construction stuff on Twitter first before we ever had a YouTube channel. Just little, because Twitter at the time would allow little short form clips. So
Yeah,
I'd
I
clip
remember.
together tiny little videos that showed some of my construction projects. And to be honest, the truth is the biggest reason that I kind of latched onto doing that and always trying to find ways to incorporate it into the things that I'm working on is because I live on YouTube to learn things, right? Like
Yeah.
everything that I learned on YouTube, right? Just something on the car needed fixing. So I look it up, right? And find a video for how to do it and then go do it myself. And so for years and years and years, everything I learned that way, right? Like nobody taught me. Most
No.
most of the things that I know, nobody actually taught me, right? Like I had to teach myself. So I thought, well, if I'm doing that, there's probably lots of other people doing that,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Certainly,
it truly is. YouTube is truly a search engine at this point. It's
yeah,
where you go to learn anything.
yes,
It's just a great tool, and I don't know if that was necessarily the beginning inklings of it or if it's evolved into that, but I
yeah.
love it because like you're saying, anything that you want to know, you can not only read it, which is sometimes difficult to follow, but you can actually watch the video and watch the instructions and compare how other people are doing it as
Mm.
well. I
Well,
love
and
that.
for me too, one of the biggest things for me was there's so many people that I know, and I get comments on my videos and on Twitter all the time saying, oh, I could never do that. And I really, really want people to understand you can. I am
Yeah.
not a superhero, right? Like
You
I
are
am.
too. You can't convince me otherwise.
I am
You quit talking
awkward
that
and
negative talk.
I am clumsy, right? Like I have an epic reputation for my freak accidents, right? Like, and sometimes I have to fail like 5, 6 times at something before I'm good at it, right? So I'm not this magical creature. anybody can do what I do. All you have to do is be determined and be willing to cuss a little, right? So
And
that's
we
one
need
of
a
the
mic because he's, he is he's clearly very supportive and
yeah.
encouraging and a great cheerleader to all that you want to do and more.
Most things. Most things. I wouldn't say all. Sometimes he's like, Teresa, I'm not so sure that's a good idea. So
As
but
he pops his head in, it's like, yeah, no, not everything.
he's pretty good though, right? Like he has confidence in my competence at least, right? And even though he has no ability to envision anything that's
Right.
not right in front of his face, he trusts in my ability to have vision. So
That goes a
and that
long way.
yeah, well, it took a long time to get there, right? Like we've been together for 15 years, right? So he trusts me more now as he's seen like these huge grand projects I came up with work out, right? Like our old house, when I did the reversal of the staircase for a long time, I was on Twitter known as the staircase lady, right?
That was nuts. I mean,
he did not want me to
best
do
way.
that. No, he was like, he said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. I'm really worried that you're going to screw it up, right? And I don't know that we need to do that. And I was like, no, I just can't stand it the way it is. I have to have it, right? And I'm willing to do the work myself. So I did. And when I was done, he said, you know what? It did work out. He loved it. Yeah. So that I think was the biggest turning point. After that, he questioned me less whenever I came up with big schemes, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, how did you two meet?
Technically, okay, so we've met twice.
Oh.
We met once when I was in my early 20s, right after I left my first husband. We met at a wedding. He was married to his ex at the time, and I was just the date for like one of my friends from high school. So and we spent the day at the wedding there. I didn't remember him after that, right? It was just a couple that we sat at the table with and drove to the wedding with one day, and they weren't anybody to me. But then 9 years later, we met again, totally by accident. I was a blogger. I did blogging for a long time, political blogging though, and but it was anonymous. I was doing it anonymously. And he was one of my regular readers. And then we had a political gathering, sort of like at a bar in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I said, well, why don't you come? And he did, and we met again, but we didn't recognize each other at all.
Fascinating.
It took a couple weeks before it dawned on me, oh my God, I know who this is.
That's hilarious. I love that.
Yeah, it was really weird. And it's funny because when we look back now, we talk about some things and throughout that 9 years, there were several times when we sort of came so close to meeting again. It was almost like it was meant to be.
I love that. I love that. And I mean, I've commented before, just here at home, that you seem to be really well versed. It does not surprise me at all that you did political blogging, because you seem really well versed in politics, in things that are happening socially, and not you really are like so I can't even think of the word.
She's saying
right
I
now.
get around.
You get around. You really get around. I didn't want to say it, but
Lots of people say it.
You have such a great grasp on so many different subjects and kind of trains of thought, and you don't seem to be one who's just kind of spewing off of what you're seeing from the news. You're actually coming from a researched, a well-opinioned place. And so it does not surprise me at all that you had a political blog.
Well, there was a long time in my life when the only books I owned were nonfiction, right? Like they were political commentary, or they were history, or some philosophy. So I spent years reading nothing but that. And I'm a very avid reader. So a lot of that. And then trying to apply it into real world situations. I guess I have a real passion I love people.
Yeah.
So I have a real passion for understanding how they work,
I
right?
love
And
that.
how I can help them be better too, right? Like, because when they're better, it helps me be better. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that that really comes across in everything that you do. I think that
Oh,
that's,
thank
yeah,
you for saying that.
I really do. I
Some
think you
people
have a
think I'm
really
really
big,
harsh. I can be very blunt, but I mean, it's almost always with love, right? Like
yeah.
if I'm blunt, it's usually just because I don't appreciate when people pussyfoot around with me, right? Like I'd rather hear a very brutal truth than a very comfortable lie. I don't want to be lied to, even little ones, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the good thing about my husband, right? Like he's a little bit autistic. So if I ask him, did these pants make me look fat? He's 100% gonna say yes if it's true, right? Like well, so
For better or worse.
never ask a question you don't want the honest answer for, because he will give you the honest answer whether you like it or not. And he won't
Yeah.
even be sorry, right? So it's fine. It works out fine because I'd rather hear the truth.
I love that.
Mhm.
Now, you two have had a blended family.
Yep.
I love
He
that.
has
And I
3
love
kids
that
and I
you
have 3
share
kids.
even your wedding pictures and your family pictures. I mean, you truly, you know, put it all out there.
Those are
So,
really old though.
yeah, but they're so cute. My gosh, you guys had a house full.
Yeah.
House full. I
Yeah,
love
it was
that.
fabulous.
That's so much fun. That's so,
Mhm.
and I can attest to that because when I was married, we had his, mine, and ours, and it was the biggest, best, just
Mhm.
never a dull moment in all the best ways. So I can totally, when I saw the pictures of you guys surrounded by kids, I was just like, oh yeah, those are the good times right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, is he also retired now, semi-retired, or is he
Yeah,
having
yeah.
to still work from? I love it.
No, I mean, he occasionally steps in at his old job on a contract basis when his former coworker goes on vacation and they need coverage.
Yeah,
So, but just a week here or a week there. It's very little.
good, good. How did you guys choose going to Costa Rica from Canada?
So, well, our plan was always to retire, and we decided a few years ago that it would probably be best to do it out of country. We'd started actually, we thought, oh, we'll get something way up north of Lake Superior, just in the middle of the bush somewhere, and just build our own little cabin up there and retire up there. But at some point, we both realized we had disc problems in our necks,
Oh
and
no.
winters were going to be very hard to manage because of, it's a little bit crippling and we have a lot of pain sometimes.
Yeah.
So we started thinking, well, then where can we go? Because nowhere in Canada is mild that we could afford, right? Like
No.
British Columbia has mild weather, but it's really expensive. So we didn't want to go there. So we started looking outside of the country, and we originally settled on Italy because they have mountains. So we wanted to be in the mountains, but their mountains, the temperature's still fairly temperate, right? Like it gets snow, but it's not a lot. And it was relatively inexpensive for property there, but there were a lot of other complicating factors that made Italy really difficult to immigrate to. And at one point, we realized like my driver's license was going to be a problem. Like there were so many problems, they just started stacking. But at one point, I realized like I wouldn't be able to keep using my Canadian driver's license, but in order to get an Italian driver's license, you'd have to pass the test. Like you'd have to take it like a new driver.
Right.
And the test was notoriously hard, and it was in Italian. You couldn't, there was no translation. And even if you passed it, like there were people that had discussions online saying they took the test like 7, 8 times and they couldn't pass it, right? And even
Oh
if you
my.
passed it for the first 3 years, they would limit the size of the engine on the car you could drive. Like I was like, I've been driving for 40, no, not 40. I'm not that old. I don't know, a long time, right? I've been driving
Yeah.
for 30 years. I'm not starting as a brand new driver. I love to drive, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not starting as a brand new driver. That really made me mad. So I was like, we got to find somewhere else to live.
You're like, fuck you, Italy.
So Well, it was also, at the time we were also our YouTube channel was starting to take off, and we weren't making any money from it at the time, but it had a potential for that later, and we were planning to try to work that in. And then I wanted to do my channel, but Italy's immigration rules, you can't earn any money at all as an
Fascinating.
immigrant unless if you settle as a retiree, it has to be pension income only, right? Costa Rica, though, like when we started looking at other countries, there was a few on the list, but none really great. And then Mike realized somewhere that Costa Rica had mountains too.
Yeah.
And he started looking at the temperatures. I mean, he would have never considered a tropical country before, ever, right?
No.
Because he hates the heat. But he started looking at the temperatures. He's like, oh, I could actually probably live in that. And then other things like in Costa Rica, we can earn money online, and they don't penalize us. They won't tax us for it. So our online money is totally free.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and they make it super easy to immigrate here, right? Like they really want you. Like I was mad about Italy because I was like, all I want to do is bring all my money, like all of it, sell my house, bring all my money, and come there and just spend my money. And
But
they're
they
like,
didn't seem to want to take it.
No, they didn't want it. So, but Costa Rica was very happy to take all our money, right? Like they're like, yeah, and if you can make more online, as long as you're not taking the job from a Costa Rican, yeah, come on over, let's do it.
It's a win-win. I love that.
Yeah, so that was a no-brainer. And it was a really big bonus for us to be able to grow food year-round. That started to become, as we were making our plans to move, started to become a really big priority when we started looking at things like interruptions in supply chains, right? Inflation, all kinds of food shortages everywhere, and then concerns about what they were doing to the food supply, right? Like I'm like Alex Jones level paranoid about a lot of things. So so for me it was like, if I don't grow it on my own land, no, I don't want to eat it.
Right.
Or pretty close, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
How
it ended
long
up being
did it
kind of
take
perfect.
once you guys landed to just really feel like you were self-sustaining?
Well, we weren't we'd never been to Costa Rica before when we moved here. So
Love that.
We wanted to travel around the country a bit first. We had narrowed down 4 or 5 different areas of the country that appealed to us on paper, that we were going to look at and see if we could find decent properties that we could afford, and whether or not they were really places we could live. That took about 6 months, maybe.
That's not bad.
We just Airbnb'd it around a couple different places in the country. And then when we came down to this area where we are now, it was almost instantaneous for me. I said, oh no, this is the place for us, right?
Yeah.
And I came down with my daughter, just the two of us, on a scouting mission. And I said to her, Mike will love it here. And I was right, because when he finally came down to check it out, he felt the same way. It was just perfect for us. And then, we looked at a few properties in the area. And then when we hit on the one that we're in, it was like instantaneous too, right? I just stood in there. I said, no, this is our house. This is the one we want.
Yeah.
It was perfect. I love it here. It's absolutely fabulous. And I don't know if you saw, oh my God, I have to share. So I just finished getting like 10 ducklings hatched a couple of days ago. And I've had baby chickens for the last couple of weeks around the property. But this morning, my girl turkey, Gladys, who has been missing for like 2 weeks, I hadn't seen her or couldn't find her, showed up today with 4 baby turkeys. I was so freaking excited.
I love that.
So now I
love that you share all of it online with us.
It's fabulous though, right? Like I want to be able to have as much food as we can here.
Yeah.
As part of what we do. And but we don't want any really big animals. Like cows and pigs are a lot of work, and the goats were a lot of work. I had goats, but I got rid of them because they were I could not manage the goats. So we decided we were going to be a bird farm. So we got all kinds of birds. But they're tasty birds. Mm-hmm.
I love tasty birds. That's the key there. I love that. I love that. Well, and I think there's definitely a lot to be said for just being able to rely on your own industriousness to feed your family. And then as you want things outside, markets or things of that nature, as things are available or in season that, you don't provide for yourself, then you can get it if it's available. But you, for the sake of survival and for your health, you've got it all right there. Now, how much land does your property encompass?
We have 2.85 acres.
Okay.
Which isn't very much, but I mean, we don't want a commercial farm. That's enough for us to make our food, right? And when we looked for, when we looked for property, I said to Mike, I don't want more than 5 acres. I would definitely want at least 1, but I don't want more than 5 because I want to be able for us to manage it ourselves and not have to hire people.
Sure.
Right? Like hiring people. We like to be good to the economy here, but hiring people, first of all, I'm very private generally in my own personal space. I don't like having strangers around. And also in this country, when you start inviting people to work for you, you open yourself up to opportunities for crime, right? To get robbed. That happens a lot here. The people here are wonderful, but that's a real concern. So I just didn't want to. I want to deal with the Ticos in the area. I want them to be like business partners or neighbors or friends, right? Like I don't want anybody to be my worker.
Right.
It's a different dynamic, and we don't want to be those kinds of people, right? Like we want to be part of the community, and it's hard to do when you have to be their boss.
Exactly.
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this is kind of exactly the right size for us. We got so many fruit trees, right? Like when we bought the property, I already had like probably 30 or 40 banana trees, plantain trees, plenty of plantain trees. We've got 8 or 9 citrus trees of different varieties, right? I've got pineapple plants. I've got several trees that grow fruits that I don't even know the names for, right? Like there's tons of food on here already just when we bought it.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I said to Mike, the good thing is if there's a total interruption in the supply chain, if it's impossible to go to the store, at least we won't starve.
No, not at all. Yeah. You've got turkey, you've got chickens, and you've got fruit. Mm-hmm. and I love it. My thing, I'm always eating bananas. It's I'm not actually meaning that. This is I'm like saying this and I'm like, this sounds dirty, but like literally because it's me, people will assume I mean something dirty. But my girlfriends even tease me about always being on like a banana diet, because I'll be like, what'd you eat for breakfast? 2 bananas. What'd you eat for lunch? 2 bananas. Like, I just love them. They keep me going. So
I hope you take fiber with that.
I just be thrilled. I'm like, oh, I'm good. Y'all don't have to feed me anything else. I'll just be here by the banana tree.
Yeah, when I harvest the bananas, I put pictures on Twitter because I'll get like 5 huge bunches of bananas. There's literally, I have to feed them to the chickens sometimes because I can't eat them all.
Yeah,
I really can't. There's only so much banana bread you can make.
That's true. What I love about you guys, you and Mike, your story, and how you've just created this life for yourself is I feel like you make it possible. You make it, attainable for people, and you show in a wonderful way that through sharing the decision-making process, through sharing, when you were still working in more of a corporate world, that it can be done, and you can create this life that you don't want to, get away from. I mean, what is a phrase like, create a life for yourself that you don't want to take a vacation from?
Yeah,
you guys
exactly.
have done that. And I think I also had Steven's story on the Bunny interviews several weeks ago.
I love him.
And I know. And similarly, he's created this life that is truly like, he certainly works, but it's a working vacation
Yeah.
for him, and that's his quality of life. And my biggest thing in all things is to create just a high quality life. I have a joke that I want to live forever, and I do, but I don't want to live. I don't want to be a 90-year-old who can't be mobile and can't do things and doesn't want to learn experiences and have things. And so I think you guys are the most amazing example, you guys and Stephen, of how to do that. I wanted to lift up this little comment. Ginger and her girls are like, I love it.
They're famous. I paid good money for these. So
yeah,
that's fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Money well spent, baby. I believe in the 5-year plan myself. a little bit of something just every 5 years, just to stay ahead of the game,
I'm not interested in any more augmentation than this, but this was an absolute must for me, for sure.
I love that. I love it.
So, I mean, part of the reason that I share all of what we've been through, I mean, I make it look all rosy, and there's so much about it that's absolutely fabulous, right? I have no regrets or complaints, but it was really friggin' hard. Like, I won't lie. It was very hard. There's been a lot of struggle. There was a lot of planning required. We're like so friggin' broke right now because we weren't ready to retire yet, right? Like, COVID kind of forced our hand.
It did.
So my husband doesn't have access to his pension yet, so we have to string it along pretty tight right now. But the purpose of doing this was that we could set ourselves up slowly so that when things loosen up a bit, that we're in really good shape, right? And the thing is, the one thing I'm real master at is figuring out ways to do shit cheap, right? Like, that's why I love all this food, all this free food, right? Like, there's trees on my property. It's like, oh, I'm going to eat that, right? Because it's free.
Yeah.
If it just grows there, right? My ducks hatch, and now I have free ducks, right? Then I'll get free eggs, right? That's the thing. I want people to understand that if you're willing to put in the work, then it's actually really not that hard to do it. Some people think, oh, well, I could never do that. Oh, you really could. It's not that hard, right? You just have to be willing to get dirty, right? You have to be willing to get sweaty. And I mean, Mike and I and my daughter were out there today digging up the ground. I'm like knee deep in the dirt. I'm getting bit by ants, and I'm picking the giant fat grubs out of the dirt while I'm preparing my potato beds, and I'm saving the grubs so I can feed them to my chickens, right?
Awesome.
Because it's free. And I can feed my chickens for free.
Industrious. That's definitely one thing that your channel has always taught us.
Yeah.
I love
There's
that.
so many things you can do for so much cheaper and free if you're willing to just do the work yourself.
What in your journey has been the most surprisingly difficult, or what was, like you said, you were kind of forced on a fast track because of COVID, so what has been the most difficult thing that you guys have dealt with just in this transition?
Learning the language.
Yeah.
That's been the hardest for me in particular. I've had really bad memory problems the last few years. So like I worked 8 years night shift, 12-hour shifts. So it absolutely destroyed my mental capacity for a long time. And I have a history of Alzheimer's in my family too. So that's probably some of that starting early. I've been altering my diet to try to stave that off, but it's been really difficult to learn language because my short-term memory's gotten quite bad. So that's been the hardest part for me. Mike's better at it than I am, but he's a terrible listener, right? Like, and I don't mean that on an emotional scale. What I mean is when somebody talks to Mike, he wouldn't be a good lawyer, for example, because when you tell him something, he needs to hear it, and then he needs to think about it and absorb it, and then gather it together in his head and come up with his response, right? So he can't really do that on the fly very, very well. And when people talk to him, they talk so quickly. Then he's looking for the whole sentence in his head, right? Like he
Right.
hears the whole sentence, he's trying to piece it all together. When I listen to the people here speaking Spanish, I'll pick out, oh, there's a word I know, right? And then I match it into the context of what we're talking about, and I can usually figure out what they're saying. So I'm terrible, though, at giving them an answer because I don't know enough of the language to form a sentence back. But I can usually understand what they're saying. But he can't usually understand what they're saying, but he can give them an answer if he knew what they were saying. So we work as a good team.
I bet.
Yeah.
I think
But
you
that's been
guys
the hardest part.
are such a great example of something that I say so often, which is that men and women were created to complement, and I think that that's what makes you two so appealing, is that you were definitely a complement to one another.
Mhm.
I love
Well,
that.
I mean, one of my mantras on Twitter is family is a team, right? Like, and you and I are both very much into a lot of the manosphere space and some of the kind of sexual dynamic space. There's a lot of talking we do about that, right? And one of the things that infuriates me is the whole rivalry man and women thing. I understand a lot of it, but I want to shake all these people and say, your family is a team, right? Like when your kid is throwing up in the middle of the night and you are also sick, you have a fever, right? And your wife has to work in the morning or your husband has to work in the morning, right? And one of your other kids has to be at dance class in the morning too, right? Like you have to work together. It's impossible to manage all that in your assigned roles, right? This is the woman thing and this is the man thing, right?
Exactly.
It's impossible to manage that. Family doesn't work that way. It's a lot messier. And it works a lot better if you all just decide everybody's going to do whatever has to get done, right? And we're not going to worry about the rest. I mean, as long as everybody's pulling their weight, a lot of the sexual dynamic stuff ends up being somebody that wants a free ride. And then there's resentment, right? But for us, it's always no. I mean, but I do all the car repair work. I do all the construction, anything that needs repairing in the house. I do all the cooking. I do most of the farming, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the things that I'm strong in. I'm good at those things. And Mike recognizes that. He could do some of them. And he definitely is the first person I call whenever I need something from a tall person.
There you go.
From a strong person, because I'm very weak, right? Like I can't even do a pull-up. But so he's my heavy lifter and he's my extra hands. He does all my grunt work, right? But in exchange, he gets really good meals.
Yes.
And he gets everything in the house fixed. So it works for us, right? Like he doesn't get troubled by, because I'm the man, I should do that. It's like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
He's a lefty. He'd end up killing himself with my power tools, right? Like, no, that's not gonna work.
I love that you guys have such a healthy balance, and it works. It works for you. There are couples that my best friend from college is similar in that she was taught as a kid, as a teenager, how to do all of the repairs around the house, how to do all of the vehicle repairs and things like that. She hardly ever has to take anything, either hire anything done or take a car to a repair shop because she can do it. And her husband was not taught these things and would, whenever he tries to get in there, causes more problems than he fixes in that area. So we all have our strengths, and as long as we can respect one another's, like you guys clearly do, I think that goes a long way.
Oh yeah, he does all my math. I'm really freaking terrible at math, like really bad at math. It makes me cry. Like math makes me cry. I can't lie.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'm really awful at it. So he does all that for me. And anything that needs technology, right? Because I'm also, for all of this stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm also quite inept at technology.
That genuinely surprises me.
I'm the type of person that solves problems with computers with a hammer, right? Like I had before I was with Mike, long time ago when there was such a thing as VCRs, I had a VCR and it started having a tracking problem, like the
Yeah.
tracking. So you'd get those lines through the picture,
Yeah.
right? And I would tap on the top of the VCR. Oh, and it would all straighten everything out. But every time I did that, I had to do it harder and harder until at some point I was like, this isn't working. So I grabbed a hammer and I started hitting the top of the VCR with the hammer. And one of my boyfriends came over and he goes, why are there all these dents in the top of the VCR? That's how I fix it. So this is how I deal with technology. It's not a good thing. My phone is shattered because it always falls out of my pocket when
That
I'm doing
makes sense.
construction. So yeah, it's we all have our strengths. That is not mine. No.
Oh, that's
And
super.
I am one of those blunt force kind of people. It's
Yeah.
not always good. Anything that needs finesse, Mike has to do because I don't have finesse. Right.
That's awesome. I love that. I love
Mm.
that. So to segue, I want to brag on you. I have discovered so many musical artists because of your YouTube channel, Play It Again with Mike and Ginger. The very first one was when you guys talked about Nightwish.
Yep.
Hold on. It was Nightwish Story Time.
Yep.
I am obsessed with that band now because of your channel.
Yep.
I mean, it's been years since I've watched that since I first saw that video. That band is so fucking phenomenal, first of all. Second of all, then I learned that they've like changed lead singer ladies and they're both phenomenal.
Yeah.
I mean, everything about it is all because of your channel.
Oh, I'm so glad. We love hearing that because we love music. We love sharing music. And most of the time it's our viewers all know the music, right? And it's new for us. But it's always a nice treat when somebody says, I never heard of this band before, but they're really good. I'm glad I found them. Yeah, it's so great when we get to share back. Yeah, and Nightwish is a fantastic band, right? Like, yeah, they're so good.
It is kind of funny though, because I'm so obsessed with them. Like I've got them on several of my Spotify playlists, and then because we're personal trainers also, I'll like play one of my Spotify playlists at the gym, for everyone to hear, because I'm there for 18 hours and I want to hear what I want to hear. And Nightwish will start to come on and people are like, what
is that?
What is happening? Like,
I'll give credit to that band actually, since we're talking about Nightwish. So when we started our channel, it was August 2020. Yeah, I guess it was COVID year, right? Because we started it because we were locked in the house for COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, August 2020 is when we started, and in October of that year is when just on a random suggestion, somebody suggested Nightwish.
Yeah.
And Ghost Love Score, right? And we'd never heard of the band before. And I got to tell you, that's probably the best possible song we could have started with. It's absolutely my favorite still. But the funny thing was, at the time we had maybe 1,000 subscribers. Not a lot, right? And we were pulling in double-digit views, right? Like nothing really big, but we were still having fun. But then that Nightwish song gets put out, and a couple hours after we put the video out, Mike was on his phone looking at our stats. He pulled up the YouTube studio and he looks at me, goes, holy shit. And I said, what? I mean, at the time we had lots of unpleasant surprises. Every time he looked at his phone, it was an email from his ex-wife. And it was like, every time he said, holy shit, I was like, what now?
Yeah,
and he
exactly.
He says, our video. And then I was like, oh no, what happened? Because I was like, it has to be bad. And it was at like 8,000 views. There's like
That's
hundreds
awesome.
of comments. And I was like, oh my, and we had thousands more new subscribers. All of a sudden I was like, holy crap. We'd never even heard of this band before. And Nightwish, I think, is the
Incredible.
band that rocketed our channel. Like
Fascinating. And
suddenly
that's not even the
made
song
it a real thing.
that turned me onto it. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. You guys didn't, when Fort Worth and I first discovered your channel by way of Twitter. I don't think, I want to say you only had a couple of thousand subscribers then.
Maybe.
We were old school followers of yours.
That's nice to hear. Our camera and lighting work, I hope, has gotten better since then. Our first
you guys are
few
like
months
pros
were
now.
brutal.
I
I
love
look
it.
back and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I put those videos out.
I think that people appreciate watching the journey, though. I really do. Even if they come in late, once you've already, made it to a certain level, I think that people truly appreciate seeing the transitions and seeing the evolution of how, your technology, your setup, your studio, your sound, all of that. It's just part of the journey. And I just think it makes you even more likable.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was always important to us to be as authentic as possible. So we don't script anything really. I mean, I have my intro and I have my outro that's just I came up with off the top of my head a long time ago and it sounded good, so I just do it all the time. But like everything else is not scripted ever. And like my husband is physically incapable of artifice of any kind, right? Like he can't fake it for anything. So whatever comes out of his mouth is legitimate, the God's honest truth from him, right? Like, so that works okay. But I mean, we're not for everybody. Not everybody loves us, but it was always really important to us that we weren't going to put on a show, right? Like we weren't going to be trained monkeys. A lot of reaction channels in particular, they do a lot of that, right? It's kind of like, oh,
exactly.
Right? It's like, well, I could do that. You see how good that was? That was amazing.
And every thumbnail is.
Well, we have a couple of those now. I have deigned to do slightly more expressive thumbnails just because I felt like our thumbnails were terrible. So now I make him pose for a picture for the thumbnail, and he resents me greatly for it, but he agrees that the thumbnails look better now. So
it's the Mr. Beast effect. I mean, that's what we call it. It's the Mr. Beast effect.
Well, hopefully it ends there and we don't get any more of the Mr. Beast effect on this channel. Right? Like, I'm not letting my husband wear any of my dresses.
I don't think he could put one of your dresses on his thigh.
Maybe on his leg.
Yeah. But even songs, it is kind of fun, like when you'll cover covers of songs, like there's this guitarist. There are all these names that I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
But there was this woman the other day that I was listening to that sounded just like Celine Dion.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you guys just find some really talented people out there.
Yeah. Amazing,
How
right?
many people have you ever come across in this channel and in this space? Had there ever been like kind of the Justin Bieber effect where you like discovered them, or not that you discovered them, but you got turned on to them when they were a pretty small, show or performer, and then you've kind of watched them get big or bigger or make it a little bit?
I don't know, but no.
Not yet?
Not that I
feel
noticed.
like you will. I feel like
it's possible.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely will.
Part of the effect is most of the stuff we discover is stuff that is suggested to us by people like our viewers, right? So if like 10 of our viewers all suggest the same person, that person's already kind of made it, right?
Sure.
In their space. So that's the biggest way that we find, especially a lot of the international talent, right? Like a lot of the stuff out of Indonesia. Like, you're not going to believe this, but 56% of our subscribers are Indonesian.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
I do love watching stats like that. That is very cool.
Yeah, I mean, we cover a lot of the talent from that area, and they have a huge population there, right? And they really love their homegrown talent. So it's not that surprising when you think about it that way, but at first it really surprised us. It was like, oh my God, where are all these people coming from? Or like half of them don't even speak English, and they still watch our channel.
Yeah.
Right? Like we don't have subtitles for Indonesian languages, right? They watch us and they don't understand what we're saying, but they watch us anyway.
Wow.
It's fabulous. But
Now,
there's so much good talent out there. It's crazy.
So is Vanny
Fabiola.
Yes, is she Indonesian?
Yeah.
She blew me away.
You put me on the
Like,
spot.
I was just like,
No,
completely
she's
stunned.
She's not Indonesian.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to think. Shit. You put me on the spot now. I can't remember
That's
where
okay.
she's. No, she's not. I don't think maybe she is actually.
I'm telling you.
Oh, I hope none of her viewers are listening.
That's okay. If they are, they'll jump in and let us know. But truly, you guys have uncovered one way or the other, whether it's, just organically or through suggestions or whatever, some really amazing talent that people like me wouldn't have discovered otherwise. So I love that.
Yeah, actually, one of the Indonesian acts, Chakra Khan, he is an amazing voice, right? Like this most incredible, gravelly, deep voice, and he does these fabulous covers. He's actually just in the middle of competing at one of the idols, I think.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see where he goes from there, because he's huge out there, and he's got he has an amazing voice. So I actually hope he makes it. We'll see.
I'm trying to think. I think I just watched one of his when I was, or listened to, I was driving, but I'm trying to think of the covers. I listened to a couple. Have you had him on the channel a couple of different times?
Oh yeah, lots. We have quite a few of his.
Yeah, I can't think of any of the covers that he's done off the top of my head, but he has a very cool.
He did a really fabulous version of "It's a Man's World" by that's oh my God, who is that wife beater? What was his name? It's right there. It's right there.
Brown? That
yes.
Yeah.
We can't go on. What's his name again? Oh my God, I can't believe I can't remember his name.
Chris Brown.
No, not that wife beater.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God, what's his name from the old days? Oh my God, I can't remember.
We'll think of it. That's the joy of live broadcast. You don't think of everything and you just move on. It's no big deal. You're gonna Google it now. You're like, hold on, I am.
It's the thing is, I know who I'm talking about, and I can't for the life of me. James Brown. Brown.
I was so close. That's pretty funny. Close. I'm like, Brown, and you're like, yeah.
And I feel bad saying he's the wife beater. That's the most defining quality for me, actually, for him.
So. He was everywhere when I was a kid, and yet when I think of him on Rocky 3. So that's we all have our connotations. But he was in everything when we were kids. My gosh, he couldn't escape James Brown back then.
Yeah, yep.
I love it. That's so fun. What is you guys record a lot now. I feel like the longer your channel is around, the more consistent you are with posting. And I love that. So what is your posting? I mean, what is your recording schedule like? Do you guys try to knock it out for the week in like a day? Do you kind of record every day? How do you like to do it?
The first couple of years we were doing 2 videos a day. And we would record them in batches, right? Like, so we would sit down for 3 or 4 hours and record like 6 or 7 videos at a time, and then process them all at once. Since I started our bedroom build, I asked my husband to knock it down to 1 video a day, just because with all the processing and everything else, I was running out of time, and I was struggling to find time to do all of that. So, and we figured our channel had gotten big enough that our traffic stats weren't going to be really widely affected by dropping to 1 video a day, and that turned out to work out okay. So we'll probably stick to 1 per day, but it's always been like Mike is like almost like a Nazi for consistency when it comes to stuff. Like, he does not like to be inconsistent ever. Right.
Yeah.
Like, if I even for me to even suggest let's drop to 1 video a day took some real convincing. Right. Like, I had to have my whole argument organized. I had to have all the stats and say, look, it's not going to really affect our traffic.
You have a PowerPoint presentation going back here.
It's pretty close, right? Like, he doesn't do change very well, like the whole new studio thing, and like he doesn't, when he gets comfortable doing it a certain way, he doesn't like to change very, very easily, which is a good thing in many ways, but it also means it's sometimes really hard to make improvements. So, but so we're at 1 video a day now, and we'll probably stick to that because it's manageable with the farm. Like, all the work we have to do on the farm, it's more manageable. And we'll sit down one day and we'll record a whole week's worth of videos at once, and then just process them and then schedule them to go out. So that makes it easy to be consistent if we do it all at once.
So what songs do you guys play? Like, what is your current like repeat 2 or 3 songs that you guys are listening to on repeat?
Well, Mike and I have very, very different music tastes.
Yeah.
He's that 80s new wave and goth stuff, right? Like, Mike still is very much into the 80s new wave and goth. Like, his playlist is very heavy on a bunch of that. He likes a lot of the new stuff that we've come across. So he has some of that on his playlist too. Surprisingly, some of the melodic metal, which is very surprising because he doesn't normally like metal, right? Like, I love metal, but he does not. So, but we found a few that he really, really, really likes. So he has a few of those on his playlist too. For me, like, I'm a huge Tool fan. So, like, if I'm doing work, like construction work, it's an industrial playlist. So Ministry and Tool, all Soundgarden, mostly 90s industrial stuff, right? For me, when I'm just cooking or whatever, my tastes are so randomly varied. It's ridiculous. Depends on what my mood is, right? Like, I have a playlist that has, no lie, opera music on it.
Yeah.
Frank Sinatra with Tool, right? Doug and the Slugs from way back in the 80s in Canada, and like a bunch of the stuff from our channel. So it literally, you could get almost anything on my playlist. Awesome. It just depends what I'm doing, right? Like the heavy work stuff, I have to have something. I have to have angry music for that, because then if I hit my thumb with the hammer, it covers my cussing.
It all fits.
Right?
George Bruno just jumped in and said how awesome it was to have you on his show years ago.
Oh, I miss George. Hi, George.
I know. We were just talking about him the other day. It's George, where are you? What have you been doing lately? You need to be on this show.
Things for me have changed so much since I was on his show, right? Like, my life is so radically different now. It's crazy.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yeah. So how often do you get surprised by the music that you are sharing with your audience?
Lots.
That's awesome.
And mostly because there's so much good music out there. It's crazy how much good music. And so we came from a background, we were Canadian, so we grew up in Canada, and the radio world in Canada was very isolated always, right? Like, they had content rules. The government had laws about how much of the content on the radio had to be Canadian, right? So
Fascinating.
yeah, it was something on the order of 30% of the content they played had to have some kind of Canadian artists or Canadian producers or something like that. So we got a whole lot of all the same thing for a long time,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of it was just really Canadian. So exposure to a lot of new things was hard there. I mean, if you weren't actually in a music scene, especially back then before there was internet, right? If you weren't
Right.
in a music scene or worked at the record store, you didn't really get anything that wasn't on the radio, right?
Yeah.
So we were really sheltered. Um, but then once the internet came along, you'd think we would have got exposed to more, but by that time we were already adults. We had kids, we had jobs, so we were kind of only like our iTunes list was music we already knew,
Well,
right?
you were busy by then.
Yeah, we put on stuff we knew from long ago and didn't really listen to the radio, and even then it was still in Canada, so it was still not a lot of new stuff.
Yeah.
So we were still isolated. It wasn't until we started our channel that we realized how much other talent there is in other countries. Like Scandinavia is ridiculous. That
Really?
country is so small. It has like the same population as Costa Rica does, right? It's crazy
Yeah.
small, but they have hundreds of the most amazing music performers, right? Like beautiful voices, really beautiful
That's
tribal music. Like probably Scandinavia would be our favorite country to find music in because the sound that they create there, the moods that they create is really incredible. So, but yeah, it wasn't until we started our channel that we really started realizing how much we'd been missing out on music just living in Canada and being stuck with the radio.
fascinating. Well, I
Yeah.
can see from what like a nationalism kind of standpoint, like, you know, I can appreciate them trying to keep the support in house, so to speak. But at
No,
the same
never say that. No,
time, you're
the government
so
never does
limited.
anything good.
You're
They never do
so
anything right.
it's so limiting. I'm doing the best. Oh, I have to put this on there. Nick August, you're so good. Thank
I love
you,
him.
Nick. Now, do you and Mike play any instruments?
I took piano lessons very, very briefly before we left Canada, but I didn't get very good at it.
Who
But I
plays
really
the
wanted.
guitar?
This is the bass. This is Mike's bass. He plays the bass.
Love it.
I say he plays the bass. He goes, I practice the bass. He doesn't think he's very good, but I've heard him play. He's pretty good. He can play along with songs. He's pretty good. He played the trumpet in high school, in the high school band,
Awesome.
and he took piano lessons for years. So Mike can read music and he can play a few things. He's a little out of practice, but yeah, he's more musical than I am.
Oh,
I'm just a
I love it.
listener.
You're so good at your appreciation, though. I mean, that in itself is a gift.
I can't do anything without music. I love listening to music.
That's
Even
awesome.
when I need to like concentrate very hard on something, I'll still at least always put on like a classical piece
Yeah.
just to have it in the background. It helps focus center my mental processes, right?
Absolutely.
I absolutely love music, so even though I can't play it.
I totally agree. Well, and I was raised in I don't particularly play any instruments, but my grandmother was a concert pianist. You know, ballet was always a big part of my life. And so we do a lot of classical music in my family. So I can totally appreciate it's like when I really need to concentrate, you know, that's my go-to. That's the only thing I listen to generally in the car.
Who's your favorite? Favorite composer?
Really like Dvorak.
Oh, okay.
But you know, I find myself again, because similar to what you're talking about Canadian listening, it's like the classical radio stations, which we have a really amazing, Dallas Fort Worth has a really excellent classical music community and opera and kind of all of the arts.
Mhm.
And our classical radio station is apparently the oldest radio station like in America or something like that.
Really?
But they
Oh,
still tend to play kind of like the top 40. It's like, it's still like the top, and they do a
yeah.
great job, but you know, you still do end up hearing like Beethoven's Fifth like 8 million times over the course of the year. God
Yeah.
bless them. You know, so I do a lot more like Spotify, you know, things like that. But my grandmother played, oh, now I'm going completely Gershwin, like
Mhm.
like Gershwin himself. It was just phenomenal. I mean,
Mhm.
so much musical talent was wasted on me, but I'm like you, I have a real appreciation. So I
One
like,
of the things I miss the most moving to Costa Rica is that part, because we lived in Canada. We lived maybe an hour and a half out of Toronto, and
yeah,
I would routinely go to the opera house. They had free shows in the afternoons, and I would watch. I love classical music. I love opera. And being exposed to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra, being able to take the kids, we took the kids to a couple of shows actually,
yeah.
um, because it's so beautiful there. It's just about the only thing worth traveling into Toronto for me at least, right? Like Mike wants the Raptors games, but I wanted the Opera House, right? And it was a beautiful Opera House. There is absolutely nothing like that here.
Well,
Nothing.
and there's
There's
so much to
no
be said for raising our children to have an appreciation for things of that nature and
Mhm,
for having the manners to behave in those kinds of environments. So making
mhm,
sure they're going to live theater, making sure they're going to musical performances, making sure they're going to stage productions, dance productions,
mhm.
all of it. It gives them a comfort in those kinds of circles that I think is unparalleled otherwise. And you actually have to be exposed to it early, or the lessons don't tend to stick.
Stick. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah, but I miss that because I would never get to do any of that here. I mean,
Yeah.
they have a music culture here that's quite lovely, but
Yeah.
if I ever wanted to go see a symphony, that would not happen here at all. I'd have to fly out of the country for it. So
Uh,
that's one
I
thing I
love one
do
of my
really
favorite
miss.
midday things to do here is the Fort Worth Symphony Orchestra actually once a month allows the public to come to their it's their dress rehearsal,
Practice,
and it
yeah,
is phenomenal. It's
right?
I go and I'm literally like the only person there, and they have like the red carpet, and they like give you bottled water and all these things, and you're just like,
That's
this is
amazing.
great.
It's great
And
though,
then
right? Like if
you go to the show the next night, and it's like, oh, it's
yeah, yeah.
phenomenal. I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
loved that. Toronto did that too, right? Like
Oh,
all their stuff in the afternoon was free. You
so
just had to show
amazing.
up. Yeah. So
Absolutely the coolest. So, what is one, if you had to listen to one piece of music the rest of your life, what of any genre, what would it be? Would it be Tool? Would it be Ministry? Would it be Chopin? Like,
just one song,
I got just one, like just one,
piece of
let's say
music.
one like artist.
Oh, if it was one artist, yeah, it probably um that's a really hard call, actually. I thought it would be easy. If it was one artist, like their entire catalog, it would probably be Tool.
Yeah.
They uh, I literally love almost everything they do. But it is a hard call. Frank Sinatra would probably be my second choice. Just because
Great.
he has a really, really wide variety of
Yeah.
songs too, and I love all his stuff. Um, and then probably Bach.
Oh,
That would be. My wedding march was the prelude to his cello suite. That's
oh.
probably one of my favorite pieces. That one and the heroic polonaise, which is not Bach. I'm trying to remember who that is. I can't remember,
I'm
but yeah.
terrible with
The names is
differentiating
classical
all of them.
music.
I really am.
Yeah,
I
me
really
too.
am. In fact, when I first, and I promise we are about to wrap up, whenever I first attended university, I was going to, I wanted to be an art museum curator. So it was all art history and things of that nature. And then I realized, kind of like what you're talking about with my math, then I realized that I was terrible at remembering art history. I have an appreciation for it. I do it. I love it. But, you know, I apparently was terrible at it. But I wanted it so badly. I wanted so badly to be an art museum curator. I just think that would have been fabulous. But I find the same is true with classical artists and even popular artists. I'm just awful.
But you know what? You would have made a terrible art museum curator only because the kind of people that get into that kind of business are the most insufferable jerks.
I'm not very good at whispering.
No, they're I love art. I love art. I don't love art people.
Right.
They're always crazy leftards, right? Not always, but most of the time. They tend to be really,
it is true,
really crazy lefties. And
just call it like you know what? Here.
I can sneak under the wire lots of times, right? Because I have all the same passion that they do, but if politics ever comes up, it's like they're like, oh my God, you're one of those. Okay, somebody who can think for myself. Yeah. I know, crazy, right?
It's a detail.
So yeah, you are in the same camp. So you would have made a terrible art museum curator because they would have sniffed you out in no time.
It's, like, it's true.
She's not one of us.
No, I'm not good at being insufferable.
Yep.
Thank you so much for coming on this show. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
Just such a fun conversation. I don't know what we accomplished, but I love that you share so much of your journey with the channel, of your journey outside of the channel, of everything that you are doing and producing. And I'm just crazy about you and Mike and the stuff that you guys put out there, or that you put out there on your behalf.
Thank you. Next time we have to do sex talk.
Yes, we do, because we just have to do a part 2 where it's like all the down and dirty stuff, because, you know,
I got stories.
I love stories. stories. Okay, well,
and you're just the kind of gal that would appreciate my stories. This is the thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. We will definitely do a part 2 and very soon, so you don't forget any of your sexy stories.
And George goes, shit, I'm not going to listen to that one. But Nick goes, I'm putting that in my calendar.
I love this plan. Let's see, it's May 9th now. I'm thinking May 10th. Like, does that work for you?
I have to build a turkey shed.
Anything sexy. I love it.
Yeah.
Where is the best place to find you for anyone who is watching that doesn't know who you are? And all of your links are down below, but where is your favorite place to interact with people?
I'm legitimately live on Twitter. I absolutely love my Twitter peeps. I'm on it all the time. I share almost everything there, either links to the other places where you can see it, or now that Elon has opened up things like large format video, and I've put in an application to have a subscription. Oh, I will pitch that. Okay.
Good.
I put in an application to get subscriptions going on my Twitter. It looks like actually I took a poll of my peeps on Twitter, and everybody really, really wants information on our journey to Costa Rica, how we immigrated, about our homesteading journey. And so I'm going to be opening up subscriptions for that kind of information. People who want to do that, people who want information how to do it, stuff like that. Hello, Todd, my kitty. But I legitimately love Twitter. I'm on it all the time. So that's the best place to hail me. It's where I have most interactions too, because there's some people on Twitter that they only kind of interact with their own people, right? Or they'll only interact with the big name people, right? They have images to maintain, but me, I'll pretty much talk to anybody. So
you sure will. I mean, just look where you are today.
You're not just anybody.
Not anybody.
No, so I mean that's the best place. But
Yeah.
yeah, I actually have to start putting videos on my YouTube again because I haven't done any on my channel for a couple of months.
Have
They
you
take a
not?
long time. No, they take a long time to edit, so I've been really, really busy. But I have a few banked that I have to actually put together. And hello, sir. See, he's really wants to see me. He's like, he never gets let into this room, but the door's open because it's really hot in here. So
Oh.
he's very happy. He's very happy
I
now.
love it. I love that Twitter is just a constant conversation. And so the fact that you are on there and engaging, you know, it's just fun. It's fun to chat with you there. So yay, everybody go to a handy ginger gal on Twitter and go to YouTube. Play it again with Mike and Ginger, and you will not regret it. You're going to find all kinds of music you didn't know existed that you didn't know you would love. So
yes.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for tuning in and watching. I appreciate all of you. And until next time, we want you to win.
Thank you.
I love it.